Okay, I think the next video only makes sense. Who are we personal developing for? Fuck personal development. Okay. Hi. I keep forgetting that every video is probably going to be posted at a different date. So anytime I'm recording, I always go through on a tangent. Who are we personal developing for? Fuck personal development. That is a question. Anytime, anytime we're doing anything, who are we doing it for? Why? I I don't know. I think this, like, a lot of these new notes have been inspired by like one interaction lately. It was like such a nice one as well. Like, fuck, those times where you look at yourself and you go like, this is something super beautiful that's happening, and like an interaction brings out the most of you. I had this conversation yesterday. Sometimes all it takes is just one conversation for your entire life to kind of like shift. And I, for myself, tend to notice when I'm doing things differently and when I'm actively kind of like doing things differently. And so far, over the past kind of years, every time I've changed has been when I noticed again, I'm saying changed instead of saying personal developed, right? So anytime I've changed when I was kind of disappointed in something. And normally, it's when you're disappointed in something, it's because you didn't notice it soon enough. It's just like something that should have happened sooner or whatever. Like, it's always disappointment happens when you're kind of like late in noticing something, late in understanding something, late in I don't know, just engaging with something. There's always that kind of like, it's either fear of missing out or missing out completely and then being like antsy about it. But first, we're developing whether we like it or not on a daily basis. Things are affecting us. But the whole personal development theme adds a lot more stress to us. And I think most of the time it's because our understanding of why we make those choices is always kind of like vague and in the background. The motivation behind it, maybe. I'm a kind of guy that thinks motivation is a symptom of something instead of an actual vibe. There's no he's motivated vibe. There's he's interested vibe, and motivation kind of like flows after the interest. But who are we personally developing for? I really don't think we owe personal development for ourselves. But maybe right now I'm thinking of like some Buddhist Eastern wisdom teaching, even some like Muslim teachings and like Christian teachings, where just do better when it comes to others. And if I think about it, like reflecting on my engagement, when I was hanging out with that person, effectively the thoughts that came to my head the first couple of days were kind of like the anxious thoughts, like, what are they going to say? How's it going to happen? When will I fuck up, kind of thing. But then halfway through, I started realizing my thoughts were more like, how can I do this better? How can I send a message better and express a certain like thought better, understand better, listen better, these kinds of things. And overall, it felt that the first couple of days were managed the best way possible. But the last days were a lot more in a feel, in a moment, kind of like perspective, where things are building on top of each other. And the catalyst naturally was her, but the actual engagement that I felt basically just, how can I don't know, how can I just anything better? How can I just be better in whatever that's happening? And not at one moment was I thinking, what am I getting out of this? And how is this affecting my growth or affecting how I communicate or affecting anything? My entire focus was outwards. And it became a lot more profound from a whole development perspective. And I'm using that as an actual, like, I'm using that as more of a test case. But a year ago, when I decided I want to start every day, I want to walk I want to make this my daily walk. I want to walk for the sake of just, I want to spend the hour not concerned with my own things. I want to spend the hour walking, just looking at the sky, observing maybe the beauty of nature, just seeing people running and doing all kinds of things. I want to just devote, is a good word, that hour for something completely beyond me. And my life literally just shifted bit by bit every day. And anytime I'm trying to work for myself, do the work that I want to do, I've always found myself kind of stuck. And anytime I take this work and I go like, I'm gonna do this because I owe it to that person or to this guy or that friend. And I did that like a couple of times like last year where I go like, especially like my dad, it's like my dad would listen to me and I was like, my dad believes in me. So I can't let him down. And I end up basically being more productive at work. And when I'm doing that work for myself with only what I want out of it in my head, I find myself stuck and kind of like standing in my own way and all this kind of nonsense. So I think the question is like, are we really personally developing ourselves? Or are we really just honestly detaching ourselves from our own minds in order for us to develop through the things that we're engaging with? Which literally means anything we're engaging with, it's always best to do for anyone or anything that's engaging with it. Whether it's life, whether it's God, whether it's people. Any outcome that we want is always going to be much better if we want it for something beyond ourselves. I think that's how people kind of like click maybe and like start falling in line when it comes to ideologies, because most of the time the people that are thinking, they're thinking maybe that's entrepreneurship at like a deeper level, because they always tell you what's the problem you're fixing because you're not doing this for yourself, even though that's your idea, it's your baby and everything, but you kind of have to do it for the sake of whatever, in order for it to exist somewhere, in order for it to actually be accepted, in order for it to affect you. Because if you're only looking at yourself and how you want to do it, you're stuck within the realm of yourself. But if you're doing it as a tribute to something beyond you, if you're doing it as a tribute to something, the there's a good conversation that I have to actually like put. Maybe I'll put it under this in a movie called The Man Who Saw Infinity. He was discussing his gift of numbers, and he was discussing how he sees God in all of them. And the other guy was discussing scientifically his own atheism. And he ends up, I don't know if he ends up converting the other guy or not, but he explains it beautifully. He goes like, every time I'm focused on my work, I'm doing it under the name of God. So the only thing that's present in front of him is the fact that he wants to kind of like grow so that he could better do the job that he's doing for the sake of his God, or his version of God, at least. And so, when asked why he does what he does, his response was anything but for himself. Whilst more normal people like try to kind of like create stuff so their name could be heard. But the only people that succeed are the people that never give a fuck about that shit to begin with. So effectively, anytime we're we're trying to create that whole personal development lifestyle, all it becomes is just another interest. We're not really developing, are we? We just become more interested in personal development. There's a book called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. He discusses a girlfriend of his that kind of created a vibe around happiness. And suddenly she started being happy every single time she made a decision about what makes her happy. And then after a certain period of time, that wouldn't make her happy, and she makes a different decision and a different decision. And that became a lifestyle. He explains it this way, which was fascinating because that's literally what we do as people. We kind of like pick things, we do them until we don't want to do them anymore. And most of the time, it's because that's our nature. We get bored. And our mind always wants something more. And often, when we're only reflecting on ourselves, we're barely scratching the surface. But when we're reflecting on something bigger than us, life, people, society, communities, we're always becoming more and developing better. Personal development, man. Fuck it. Who are we personal developing for? Yeah.